Hi, I wanted to give you a chance to get kind of my mini lecture on Unit 2. Unfortunately, there wasn't a great time to set up an online meeting for the whole class, but I'd be happy to take each one of your questions, find a time to meet you online and talk about things. So if you want to ask questions or have a real time discussion, just let me know. We'll figure out a time that works. But so that you don't have a delay in getting started on your Unit 2 stuff, I wanted to talk to you about chapters 3, 4, and 6. Chapter 3 is probably the most intense. And I know this is terrible of me, but I want you to ignore reading most of the chapter. Most of the chapter has a horrid number of math problems and scary looking calculations. So read it, but ignore the how to do all the math stuff. Just read, okay, when you get this number, this is what it means. I'm going to walk you through a lot of problems, like what you're going to do in your homework, because you have a sheet called the time value of money. It's what I have on the screen. It's in Moodle, in Unit 2. You just download the document, and it has questions in it. You can type right in it, answer it, and then save it and submit it back in the Dropbox. What the whole purpose of time value of money is trying to do is do the calculations to figure out how much money you'll have in the future if you save some right now. Well, this is personal finance. We're going to be encouraging you to set up that emergency fund, to start saving for retirement, save for your kids' college education, all those goals that we've been talking about. You're going to need to figure out, okay, I know I need to save money, but how much should I save each month, each year, so on, so I'll have enough when I get to doing what I want to do, retiring, paying for the kids' education, and so on. So, like I said, the math looks really scary. That's why we're going to use a calculator online, and it makes it pretty simple once you know how to use the calculator. So the first thing I'd like you to do is get your textbook, turn to the homework parts of Chapter 3. You don't have to answer any question at the end of Chapter 3, but the textbook comes with questions at the end of the chapter. I'm going to steal some of those to show you how to do problems. So these are just my examples. Instead of me making up one, we're just going to do ones at the back of the chapter. And then we'll take a look at how that relates to the time value of money worksheet, and you'll be able to see, oh, okay, that's just like the one at the end of the chapter. I can do that. So get your textbook, pause the video if you need to, open to chapter 3, pages 85 through 89 are pretty much the end of the chapter. And we'll be playing around the problems there. The other thing we're going to do is I'm going to take a second and switch screens and show you a calculator that is great. It's online. I'll show you how to get to it. I'll even send you the link. And of course, I have to find it first. There we go. Now you should be seeing a website on the screen, and it's called, I know the name is ridiculous, dinkytown.net. When you go there, this is the screen you'll come to, and you can see it has a ton of financial calculators. Mortgages and cars and credit cards and all this stuff. You're going to click the one that says finance. So when you click finance, it comes to first personal finance calculators. And again, you get a bunch of calculators. We want the second one. So when I send you the link, I'll probably send you the link to get directly to this calculator. But just remember dinkytown.net, and then you can navigate there if you forget or you don't have the link. Yeah. When you look at the website and this particular calculator, the screen pretty much looks like a calculator screen. You're going to take your mouse and click numbers, and hopefully you can see that. I'm going to move this little box out of the way. And you should see that I've clicked in 450, and I can clear. I can do 852. Whoops, I don't want 52. I want 55. So there's a backspace button, again, clearing it out. Most of the stuff's pretty normal. The stuff that's weird is down here. PMT, I, percentage, PV, and FV. I know you don't know what that means or how to use it yet. That's okay. Down below are descriptions of what all these buttons are used for. If You need them, the descriptions are there. I hopefully am going to teach you enough that you won't need to go down there and look at things. But what this calculator helps you do is, like I said, figure out how much money you'll have in your bank account by a certain point. Let's pretend that you put in $1,000 in the bank, $1,000, and you put it in today. So I'm going to touch PV. That means present value, what you have right now in the present. So it puts $1,000 there. It turned all the rest of these zero because I haven't told it any numbers. But because I clicked PV, it knows that I'm going to do a calculation with these features down here. I'm going to put in a bank account that's going to give me 5% interest. I just have to type the 5 and hit the interest button. It makes it 5%. So you don't have to worry about converting percents to decimals or typing in a decimal sign or percent sign or anything. Okay, so now I've told it I'm going to put $1,000 in the bank, and the bank's promising to give me 5% interest. If I leave it there only 1 year, 1 is the number of years. That's what N stands for. Now, I could probably do this by hand. $1,000 times 5%, that's $50. So at the end of the year, I should have $1,050. But I'll let the calculator show you that, yeah, that's the way you do it. You just say compute. That's telling the calculator, this is the thing I want you to compute, the future value. And I'll have $1,050. Well, that's not so bad. I mean, we could have done that by hand, so the calculator didn't really enhance our experience that much. Now, what I want you to do when you are done with the problem is take a 0, click 0, and then touch every one of these buttons. It wipes everyone back to 0. I tend to forget to do things like that, and then I find I've stuck a number in the calculator, and all my calculations are off because I forgot there was this number stuck in memory. So, good habit to get into, just zero everything out. So now let's say we're going to keep our $1,000 in that bank account, 5% interest, but I want to leave it there 25 years. Well, I could do the math. $1,000 times 5% gives me $50 for the first year. So I'd have $1,050. And then the second year, it would be 5% of $1,050. And then I'd have to add that into the account. And then I'd have to do the third year. You can see how long this would take? Yeah, we don't want to do that. And don't make the mistake of thinking it's 1,000 times 5% times 25 years, because you're forgetting that the interest gets put in, and then the next year you do 5% of that whole total, and then you add money in, and then it's 5% of that new bigger total. So you're forgetting the compounding if you just try to multiply these three numbers. So let's see what we'll have. We're going to compute future value. It'll grow to $3,386 if we just put $1,000 in and left it there for 25 years. So again, I'm going to clear out the calculator, and I told you to have your book open. I want you to go to number 5 on page 86. It says, calculate the future value of $5,000, earning 10% after 1 year. So $5,000 in our account, 10% interest, and 1 year. Again, the 1 year, we could probably do the math. So we'd have $5,500 because 10% of 5,000 is 500. 500 would be dropped in the account where there was already 5,000 waiting. We'd have $5,500. But the problem goes on and says, now calculate the future value of the $5,000 earning 10% if it's there for 20 years. Well, I still want 10%. I still want 5,000. The only thing I'm going to change is the number of years. So I'm going to change it to 20. I'm just going to type a 20 and hit N, and it'll take the place of the 1. But the future value doesn't automatically update. We need to compute future value. There you go. That's how much will be there after 20 years. So we've learned to find the future value. If you go to question 13, you'll see that it's asking a similar type of question. Your grandmother just gave you $6,000, and you'd like to see what it might grow to if you invest it. So calculate the future value of $6,000, given that it'll be invested for 5 years at 6%. Well, I'm going to be good and zero out everything so I don't make a mistake. 6,000 and 5 years, doesn't matter what order I put these in, and 6%. Then all my factors are in there, compute future value, and if I leave it there 5 years, it'll grow to $8,029. Part B is something we haven't talked about yet, so I want to take the time to go there. Recalculate Part A, the same calculation, using compounding period that is a semi-annual or every 6 months. So what does that mean in plain English? We have been going on the scenario that you put $6,000 in the bank pays you 6% interest, and it drops that money in your account at the end of every year. So you have to wait till the end of the year before you get any interest. And then they put the 6% in that account, and then you wait another year to get 6% on that, and so on. They're saying, well, what if the bank twice a year, like at the end of June and then again at the end of December, calculated interest? Well, they wouldn't give you 6% interest twice during the year. That would be 12% interest for the year. Instead, they're going to give you 3% each time they do it. So half a year's interest in June and another half a year's interest in December. So now my $6,000 is only getting 3% interest, but it's getting it 10 times. Yeah, let's talk about why it's 10 times. The money's going to stay in the account for 5 years and get interest dropped into it twice a year for each one of those 5 years. So it's going to get it, the number of times it's going to get interest paid to it is 10. So now you compute the future value. Notice this is $8,029. So it jumps a little. If this is a significant amount of money for a really long period of time, this would be a big difference between what it was at annual interest and semi-annual interest. But semi-annual will always give you more interest than annual would have. And if I had done this monthly, it would have been even more than semi-annually. So the shorter the period of time the interest is given, the better the interest. Because when they deposit that interest in, even if it's just a small amount, like a 1 month's amount, it's going to pile up in there and can make the balance a little bigger. So the next month when they give you interest, they're paying interest on that whole balance, that whole amount, including interest. So it helps. And part C of the same problem, question 13 on page 86. Now let's look at what might happen if you invest the money at 12% rather than 6%. So we're going back, we've got to do part A and part B. So we're still investing $6,000, this time at 12% interest for 5 years. So I'm doing part A, where they only pay interest once a year. But we've doubled the interest rate from the original 6% to 12%. So that should probably have a big effect on how much money we'll have. And it does. When we did part A, it was about $8,030, $29, something like that. Now we're up at $10,500. Now, do you remember what to do to make it semi-annual interest? If they're paid 12% a year for 5 years, we would change that to 6% paid 10 times. And we'll compute the future value. And you can see you gained about $200 just from the difference between semi-annual interest and annual interest. Okay, that's probably enough with putting an amount of money in there and leaving it. The other kinds of stories you're going to see involve you know what? Let's take a second and go over to our time value of money worksheet, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the time value of money worksheet. The beginning here is just the author writing to you about why you should learn time value of money and how it's important. Then, finally, down here, they start talking to you again, why it's important, how it works, go through an example, and it takes you well into page 2 before you find your first problem that you have to actually do. So number 1, this is one you are supposed to do. Now, it tells you to go to a table or an appendix, don't worry about it. You're going to use the calculator instead. It says you have invested $5,000 today. Compute the amount that would accumulate at the end of 8 years if the interest rate is 8%. Then do it again if the interest rate is 10%. So you're going to get 2 answers here. Then it goes on to say, you decide to give your 3-year-old grandchild a gift of $5,000, which is invested in the stock mutual funds that are growing at a rate of 8%. So $5,000, 8%. How long are you going to leave them there? I don't know what cruel person is going to do this grandchild, but the grandchild doesn't get the money till they're 53. A little planning way ahead here. So 50 years from now, how much money will be in that account? So you've got your things that you need. You need to know how much money was deposited at one interest rate and for how many years. Remember, the child's already 3. So we're waiting until they're 53. That means 50 years from now. So 5,000, 8% in 50 years. And you got your answer. So I think you can do this type of problem. Future value of a lump sum. Number 2 is kind of like it. You still want to find out how much money will be in my account in the future. But it's a different type of problem. Let's read the story. You invest $3,000 per year. Here is the big important phrase, per year. You're not just putting $3,000 in the account and leaving it there. You're putting it in every single year at 9% interest, and you're going to do it for 30 years. So if you're doing some math in your head, $3,000 deposited every year for 30 years, that's already $90,000. And that's not even considering that they're going to pile interest on that. So be careful and have some idea of what you think your answer is going to be. So if your calculator says you'll have $800 when you're all done, you know, okay, I did something wrong. I deposited it over 90,000. It's got to be bigger than 90,000. It helps to kind of have that ballpark idea in your head. Let's see if we can find a textbook problem that's kind of like that and watch what happens with it. Oh, I'm not finding one really quickly that involves an annuity in here. Well, let's make up one. Let's go back to our calculator. And there's our calculator. I'm going to zero everything out. And let's say that people are putting $5,000 into their IRA every year. Now, we've typically gone down here for when we invest money because we're doing it right now. But this $5,000 is going to be done every year. So it's like a payment into our own savings account. And let's make up an interest rate, 8%. And oh, this is going to be our retirement money. So we're going to leave it there because we're really smart. We started when we got our first job out of college, and we're going to leave it there 40 years. So $5,000 put in every year for 40 years. Again, that's a huge amount of money. That's $200,000 put away, not even thinking about interest. I want to know what I'll have in the future, so I'm going to compute future value. $200,000 is what I put in, 40 payments of $5,000 each, but it grew to almost $1.3 million because I spent so long with it growing interest. Every year they put 8% in there, and then that grew and grew and grew. So when you're dealing with making payments, or doing something multiple times, use the payment feature. If I was putting that $5,000 in an account and just leaving it there, I would use the PV instead. Whatever feature you're not using, you notice I used payment, but I didn't use PV, just let the 0 sit in that field. Just like when we were doing the original problems, payment always had a 0 in it because we weren't using it. Okay, then the next thing you need to do is sometimes you don't want to know what you'll have in the account. You want to know what you need to put away now in order to have that. So let's say you got a huge bonus at work, you got an inheritance, some reason you got a bunch of money that just came to you. And you're thinking, oh, I really should be practical with this. I need to put some in an account because the kids are going to go to college and I want to have money for them. So let's say the child's 3 years old, like the story problem with the grandma. You're going to need the money in what, 15 years when they're ready to go to college? So I know I want to talk about how much money will be there in 15 years. And because college is really expensive, I want to have $80,000 saved. So I put it in the future value. I'm not asking it to tell me what the future value is. I'm telling it what I want the future value to be. And I'm telling it that I have an account at the bank that's going to earn me 6% interest. Oh, sorry, I hit the decimal on that one, didn't I? I'm going to be good and zero it out and then start again. 6% interest. So now all I need to do is say compute present value. And that means I have to put $33,000 in the bank account now. And if I left it alone for 15 years at 6%, it would be $80,000 when I was done. But a lot of us don't just have $33,000 laying around. Most of us want to think, okay, how much do I need to put away every year so I can kind of build to that number? So I'm going to say, clean out the present value. I zeroed it out, but just type in zero and hit in present value. I want to know how much I need to deposit every year in order to reach that number. So compute the payment. It shows up as negative. I know that's a little weird, but it's saying if I put $3,437 in an account every year for 15 years at 6% interest, I would have the money I need by the end. So when you're trying to find the payment of some future amount you want, go ahead and click in how much you want and the number of periods and the interest rate, and then compute payment, and you should get your number. So we've really seen four things. We've seen, I'm going to put an amount of money in now. I want to know what it'll be in the future. Or I'm going to deposit so much every year. I want to know what I'll have in the future. Or I know what I want in the future. Please tell me what I need to deposit now. Or I know what I want in the future. Please tell me how much I need to deposit each year. So hopefully that helps you work through that time value of money worksheet. If you run into problems, just let me know. We can work through a few more problems. But like I said, dinkytown.net, awesome calculator, makes this a whole lot easier than using the tables in the appendix or math problems that are shown in the chapter. Chapter 3 is all about time value of money. So really, Chapter 3 and the time value of money worksheet go together. Read the chapter, ignoring the math, do the time value of money worksheet. Then you jump to Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is all about income taxes. So you're going to look at, of course, Corey and Tisha Dumont as you're doing your homework and help them with their taxes. What I want you to look at is I want you to go to page 95 while I change our screen to a Excel worksheet. There we go. And we're going to talk about how to figure out somebody's taxes. There's a real simple chart that may seem a little confusing on page 95, but once you see it work, you'll understand what's going on. Page 95 shows you table 4.1. the first thing you have to come to is what is somebody's taxable income. That is not the same as if you take what you got paid this year or your total earnings, get your W-2 at the end of the year, looked at it and said, I made that much this year. That is not the number that we're looking up in this chart. Taxable income comes from taking what you see on your W-2, your gross pay, and you get to take a few things away from it first. So go to page 94, and it's going to talk about the things to take away. And sorry, I lost my sentence here. I'm trying to do too many things. So your taxable income comes from your gross pay minus your allowances. So if you take away so much for every child that you have, every dependent you have, you can reduce your gross pay to make taxable income. So generally the number that you see on your W-2 isn't your gross pay. It gets reduced some. So let's say that after we do all this with our pretend family, we have taxable income of, these people are going to make, trying to look at the charts to make something work out, $100,000. That's the family's taxable income. And we will make this family filed by somebody who's married, because that makes a difference in which chart we look at. Even though table 4.1 looks like one chart, it's actually broken into the top half is for single people and the bottom is for married. So we're going to go to the bottom, and you can see all these different interest rates or tax brackets, percentage rates, 10%, 15%, 25%, 28%, so on and so forth. You don't just say $100,000 times an interest rate or times a tax rate and get an answer. That's not how our tax system works. We are actually going to break up this $100,000 into chunks. The first one, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do something and talk here too. We're going to break this up, and the first chunk we're going to break off is $18,150. So the first $18,150 the taxpayer makes gets taxed at 10%, a really low rate. So I can say 18,150 times 10%, and the tax they're going to pay on that earnings is $1,815. But these people made a whole lot more than $18,000. So let's give them some more to look at here. And the next chunk that they need to look at is another $54,000. Sorry, I'm doing math in my head. $650. Let me check that out. I just don't feel confident that I did that math right. 73,800 minus 18,150. 55,650. See, I told you I didn't do it right. Okay. So the next chunk of money that they make is at 15%. So we do the same math problem. 55,000 times 15, and they owe another $8,000 in taxes. So far, adding these two chunks up, that's $73,800. The rest of their money, well, they only made $100,000. I mean, not only, but compared to how much we're talking about, I'm saying this minus this. Okay, $26,200 is all the rest of the money that they earned. $26,200, and that's taxed at the next rate of interest, or a tax rate. Can't be saying interest. I have too much of that other problem. So the taxpayer pays 10% on some of their money that they made in the year, 15%, and 25%. So the grand total of all the taxes is this plus this plus this. So their taxes for the whole year are $16,713. Remember how much money they made in the year? They made $100,000. So if we looked and tried to figure a percent, we would say that 16,000 out of 100,000, and showing that as a percent, these people were taxed about 16.7% as a tax rate, because some of their money was taxed at 10, some at 15, some at 25. It averages out to 16%. And then if we wanted to even get pickier, we could go back to whatever the gross pay was, which I didn't even show you. I just said I already did gross pay minus allowances made taxable income. Maybe their gross pay was something like $115,000. Still paying only $16,000 in taxes, their interest rate would even be smaller, or tax rate would even be smaller. So all that to say that our tax rates are a little complex. The fact that we're graduated means that not everybody pays a certain percent. You don't just get taxed at a certain rate. You get taxed. Everybody pays 10%. People that make over $18,150 have some of their money taxed at 15%. If you make over $73,800, some of it's going to get taxed at 25%, but only the part that's over $73,800. Anyway, so they're going to walk you through some of that, explain to you what different things affect your taxes, and how tax returns are looked at. To make this a little easier so people don't have to do this, there are charts like page 107 where you would look up somebody, and this is for a particular annual income. Now, obviously, this chart doesn't cover $100,000 gross pay or taxable income, but you'd look up their taxable income on whatever line it applies, and they're using the example that the person made $48,623 a year. So you go to the line that says 48,600 to 48,650, and yep, that's right where we're at. Move over to how many or which way they filed, and it says single, married filing jointly, married filing separately, and head of household. And find the right one that fits the situation. And for this problem, it was married filing jointly, so their taxes for the year are $6,401. Somebody's already done all this crazy math that we just did in the Excel spreadsheet and turned it into a table. And in this day and age, we have online charts where you can just tell it certain things about yourself, and it will do all these calculations for you. But to help you understand what's happening behind the scenes, this is what you got. Tax credits, especially since you're in school, it might be good to look at some of the tax credits that involve education. And those are at the top of page 108. And tax returns are shown to you for a sample family on page 114 and 115, and they stretch on to 116. So a whole discussion of taxes. And then we jump, and we're going to go to chapter 6. I want to double check that, but I think it's chapter 6. And of course, I don't have it open right now. Unit 2 in Moodle says chapters 3, 4, and 6. Chapter 6, I think you'll find very refreshing. It talks about credit cards. It's going to give you lots of good advice about credit cards, how to look for different features in your credit card, what clauses can be in there, how much the interest can be on a credit card. Some great tips. Look for grace periods, what the annual fees are, the Card Act, what rights are in it, what the credit card companies can do and can't do, and learning about your credit score, what to do if your credit score doesn't look good and you go look at your credit report and there's something wrong on it that isn't really something that you caused, how to take care of that. So great information. And another helpful thing is page 188 at the bottom of the page is the credit card habits quiz. I'm not asking you to turn it in. It's a little quick quiz where you just answer the questions and decide yes or no, do these apply to me? And then it kind of gets you thinking, where am I at with my credit card habits? So hopefully that's given you a lot of information to help you do your homework for Unit 2. I am plowing my way through the homework for Unit 1 and trying to get grades in the gradebook. If you go to the gradebook and see a score, please go back to the link you clicked on to submit your assignment, click on the little pencil, and you should be able to read my comments for your papers. If you don't see a grade, then just know that I'm plowing my way through them and I'll get to yours real soon. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. And like I said, if you want to meet online, I just knew tonight was a little crazy and I found a couple hours to be able to put this video together. So instead of posting anything and letting you know I was going to be here, I just thought I'd throw it together and get it out before it was too late. Have a good night.